Actually, I would say an old foe is on the docket for next week. And I don't want to say old, but, they're kind of up there. Gophers next week will take on North Dakota, Drew and Nate. And this was a matchup going all the way back to my days watching hockey, the 90s and early 2000s, when it really was, me getting introduced to hockey. This was what you circled on the calendar, right? Didn't have Wild when I grew up, most of it. So this was, the marquee matchup, and it kind of continues to be so, even though it's been some time. They've had some rematches recently, but how exciting is it to get North Dakota essentially second weekend into the season?
Yeah, it's just kind of the nature of the beast now that they're, not all in the same conference anymore. And obviously, as the rivalry has kind of taken a bit of a pause, I don't know how to say it, but the two teams have remained independently impressive and good and competitive. But it is nice to see when these two teams get back together, because the fans still have such a big appreciation for what it represents, and what a lot of the old games used to be. And obviously seeing all the all the highlights and low lights depending on your perspective over the years. And but I mean, this is it. It's electric. Oh, anytime the Gophers play North Dakota, it's always a great time. And I think a lot of people who watched Saturday's game, or heard the score from Saturday's game that North Dakota played, they probably said, "Oh boy, I don't know, could this end in a tie?" Because it was icebreaker tournament against Wisconsin, so they beat Wisconsin 2-0. But so yeah, is that good for the Gophers? Is it bad? It's good for nobody wearing maroon and gold, but regardless of result. But it should be a pretty fun matchup this weekend. And yeah, like I said at the start too, you got to pack in these non-conference games against all your in-state teams that you can't play in the conference anymore. So early season's always going to be, now it seems like it's going to be the most intriguing part for a lot of Gophers fans, regardless of how you feel about the Big Ten or whatnot. I think it's just the most entertaining part for old school rivalries and old school fan bases.
This time of year seems to bring it out a little bit better. I know they tried to make Thanksgiving weekend like the Minnesota North Dakota rivalry, and just it didn't end up sticking, which is too bad. But yeah, trying to find the second week of the season, it's great for the fans, and this is honestly a lot of this. The history of this rivalry is what drives it. The fan bases, the passion. I got the chance to go up to Grand Forks. Oh my God, now it's 6 years ago for the first one that they had up there in 6 years after, or 5-6 years after it got that pause from realignment. And you wouldn't have guessed that Minnesota hadn't been there for that amount of time. It felt the passion was still there. The passion when the Fighting Hawks come to Mariucci is still just. It's the same from the fans. It's a little different from the players, and I do wonder how we're going to get into it as we're starting to reach in we're a decade into realignment out west. So we're getting to the point where it's not as big for the players, but all the players, every time you talk to them, they know the history, and they know what it means to this program. They know what playing North Dakota means to the Minnesota program, and vice versa. And it's going to be great. It's going to be really interesting coming in on the second week of the season for both of these teams, because they're both trying to still figure things out and get going in the long run. There's high expectations at both places. North Dakota has a completely turned over defense, which you almost never see in college hockey, and just trying to put things together. Minnesota has players scoring in the NHL that they would love to have on their team right now, that they have to replace. And just, most programs are in this situation in October. It's kind of the interesting thing of college hockey, where everyone's figuring themselves out and trying to improve and go for February, March, and April. But these are the games that really matter for the rivalries. They matter for the fans, and they matter in the long run in the pairwise, because these are the ones that, when you figure out which conference has the better record against other conferences, how it's going to affect the pairwise rankings when it comes to talking about February and March.
So with that being said, guys, and this is the only time of the year you'd ever want to go up to Grand Forks, and it's not anything to do with North Dakota. It's all because of the Gophers, right? So with that being said, expectations at all for this upcoming weekend against the Fighting Hawks, again, in the Ralph Engelstad Arena, which, I mean, all things considered, and I know I'm going to get blowback from this, still a really nice barn, to put it that way. But Mariucci also had some renovations this past year, leather seats right by the glass. That's a new concept. I could dig that. But what do you think? Do you think the Gophers can rise up to the test that is North Dakota? Yes, a whole new defense, 7 new defensemen, as Nate pointed out, but a very lethal and talented forward group that can put the puck in the back of the net almost at ease at times. So, Drew, what do you think will happen this upcoming weekend?
Boy, I'm still thinking about that. You think you might get blowback for saying the Ralph is a great arena. I think that's if you disagree with that, be sure to let us know, because I don't know if I've ever met anyone who thinks the Ralph is a not a great, or probably it's top 3, I think, for college hockey rinks. I mean, ones that I've ever seen. It's incredible. It should be an NHL rink. I mean, there
don't call a radio call there, because they'll put you in a spotlight area. I remember calling the game between St. Cloud and North Dakota, and I was literally in a spotlight corner. So, like, if you had in their press boxes for that rink is like
small,
4 times smaller than it should be.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to fill it with as much seat as possible. But so we were essentially in like the corner, on the second level, way back in one of those caverns, and it was, fold table. It was great hospitality. No, I kid. Great building though for the fans' perspective. It's absolutely gorgeous. And a good place to go and support the Gophers this weekend, because I'm sure they could use some fan support up there.
It's a rink that, regardless, it should be on every fan's bucket list at some point. It's not the historic rink. It's not the old school. It's not Hobie Baker. It's not Matthews. It's not Yost. It's different in that aspect, but it is certainly something that every fan should see. All the seats are just beautiful. The sight lines are fantastic. It's 12,000 that you can feel at times. When North Dakota is doing well, it feels like 20. So for me this weekend, I think we're going to learn a lot about Minnesota and its defense. I think that's kind of going to be the thing that I'm keying in on with the Gophers. It's early in the season. You have players stepping up. You have players who are injured and out. You have people in new roles and are figuring out how to get things going on, and going up to a very hostile environment on the road where you don't get the last change against a program like North Dakota, and with all the extra adrenaline and everything going on, it's going to be a very good test for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I think, what do we think? Do you think the Gophers win them both? Do they split? I'll throw my 2 cents out there real quick, just because I'm good at this game. No, I'm definitely not. I think it's actually a splittable weekend, if I'm going to be totally honest. North Dakota, yes, but they also, remember, they picked up Ludwig Pearson from Miami, one of the better goaltenders in the NCHC. I think they're leaning on him to kind of let themselves figure it out defensively before they really put things together. I think this is where I would definitely get blowback. I think North Dakota is a bit underrated coming into this early, just because, again, the 7 players that they have are all experienced players on defense. Again, the offense led by Jackson Blake, he's a stud, not going to lie. So, like you said, it's going to be a test for the Gopher D, and I think that North Dakota maybe picks up the first win, but I think the Gophers respond as they did this last weekend and pick up the split. But call me crazy, guys. What do you think?
I got to say, I don't think you can say they're underrated. Weren't they picked like second in the NCHC this year? I'm going to say I was a little surprised to see. They're going to be a team. I mean, this is probably like an easy go back for how many years they did under Dave Haxtell, but they're going to be a team that's much better in the second half than they are in the first. Just there's so many pieces there to have to put together, and if they find it in November and December, then watch out. But honestly, I was kind of thinking the same thing, where I'm really interested to see how Minnesota responds. The first, as much as technically Friday at the X was a road game, it was not a road game. This is the first road game of the season. It's early. Yes, the Gophers do have some veteran players, but it's a new year. It's a new team. I think it's a split. I think it's almost the same thing, where it's Friday, North Dakota, Saturday, Minnesota.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go split across the board. Yeah, the defense, some defensive chemistry really perked my eyes up in both games. Just kind of some sloppy plays in the back end, and they're gonna have to figure that out. And I think North Dakota is gonna either make them sink or swim when it comes to figuring that out. I think there are a few guys up front that I think it's a shame Mason Nevers isn't available right now. I think not that anyone's played particularly bad, but I think a guy like Garrett Pinanimi, I think he had a very up and down game on Saturday, and I feel like a guy like Nevers on that line would be a missing piece that would be really, really good. But I think they're gonna obviously North Dakota's gonna make them. It's gonna make them figure it out one way or the other. Either, all right, are you ready for this competition yet? If they lose 2, no. If they win 2, sure. And then if they split it, we'll say, all right, maybe incomplete. But I do think the defense is going to have to make some bigger strides this weekend to get 1 or 2 victories. But I think I'm going to say a safe split.
Drew, what makes this weekend a success for you? I guess because we're kind of figured out we're all to split and everything, and we're all kind of hedging our bets on that end. But just what makes it a success?
I think clean defensive breakouts, I think, are clean defensive breakouts and marching up the ice without like certain forwards taking it 200 feet. But I think just clean passing in the back and being resistant to a good forecheck. And that's going to be, I think, successful in making sure it gets out of the zone. And obviously North Dakota is going to make them punish more than St. Thomas would. If they put themselves in that situation. So I think just calm, structured defensive plays, if we see that consistently, I think that's a success for the weekend. What about you?
I think for me, it's going to be all about back pressure and stepping up at their own blue line. North Dakota's forward group is fast and it's skilled, and they love to drive possession on the rush. And I think one way to slow them down is to just kind of hold the blue line a little bit and force them to dump it and have to go get it back. So in terms of, talking about the Gopher defense, I think there is going to be a test there, but also it relies on the forwards too. You got to, back check through the middle, pick up your man that's laid through. North Dakota loves to come into the zone in layers. And so they can create space. They can create passing lanes with their zone entries. So I think just being able to be smart in terms of their back check, take away those options and, try to see if you can keep them to the outside because it's hard. North Dakota loves to try to flood the middle of the ice, especially on the rush. So if you can limit those chances, North Dakota has struggled when you try to force them to be basically a let's shoot from the blue line and, let's be a grease pan goal type team. They love to have those pretty plays and open passing lanes. So if you can limit those chances, I think that's a successful weekend for the Gophers. Yeah, I don't know. Nate, do you have thoughts on that or?
I mean, you guys pretty much hit my 2 big ones. I'd say other than that, yeah, it's finding chemistry, seeing how some of these line pairings are continuing to grow. We're in week 2 of the season, so we just kind of see how this continue to grow. Gets special teams, see how the power play units find a little bit more success if they're able just to gel a little bit more. And basically, kind of win special teams battle as well, and just I find that chemistry, and just you want to end up the weekend and just looking at it being like, hey, this team is taking the steps in the right direction.